Welcome to Kaleidoscope. Let's talk. What you just heard was the 12-bar blues, a characteristic feature of jazz which was played by Dr. Gananath Dasanayaka, whose career is in medicine, but his passion in life is jazz. He's a founding member of the jazz quartet En Route. International Jazz Day was this week, and we thought we'd get a bit of jazz into our system on Let's Talk today. Jazz has been around since the 1900s, and jazz runs in the lifeblood of cities like New Orleans. Originating in the African American communities of Louisiana, jazz roots lie in blues and ragtime, and since the Jazz Age, which was in the 1920s, was elevated as a major form of musical expression. And the word jazz was derived from the slang word jasm, meaning energy, vitality, and spirit. And here's Dr. Gananath Dasanayaka on Let's Talk. What really is jazz?
Well, if I were to give just one word, I would say it's freedom. Freedom for a musician or a performer. But no, that's not it. Ultimately, I would say jazz has so many elements. We can say the blue notes, then the jazz swing, the blues chords, the call and response, and the freedom a musician has to improvise. And also syncopation, the rhythm improvisation, where you don't stick to a rhythm. And improvisation is the key element where the performer gets the chance to originally maybe say be himself.
How is jazz differentiated music-wise, and as well as what does a musician have to do to be able to play jazz?
Number one, I think he should first love that type of music to play it. Genuinely have a feeling, all right, where you enjoy yourself improvising on a syncopated rhythm, which is not strict. That would be the key element. In addition, there are technical things that they should know as well. Certain scales, like the blues scales, then the modes, which are slightly different from the average scales that are used in Western music. It's just the major and the minor, but here it's slightly different. So those aspects would definitely give him an edge over a pop musician. And also, key to being able to improvise. That's the key element.
Early strains of jazz were built on a bent or blue note. What exactly is this?
European music, they use this, I'll take C major. That's a major scale. And also they use minor scales as well. As against that's the usual major scale sound. So if you use the blue note, it should sound something like. As for the bent note, guitarists, they can actually use their strings. So between two notes, still there are frequencies. By bending, for example, like tang, you bend it to get another frequency which is not exactly on the head of that sound C. It's like between a C and a C sharp, another sound.
Okay.
So they can bend the note by pulling the string downwards.
So what instruments were originally used in jazz, and how has that evolved now?
Originally, it was drums and dance. The African slaves who were brought to New Orleans during the harvest, they used to have kind of celebrations. So they used to use like gumbo boxes with sheepskin heads, use them as drums, then triangles with jawbones, use them for rhythm. So it was like cross rhythm, and they used to dance. That's where it originally began. The history of, if you take the history, it began with drums and dance. Later on, the European influence actually introduced the European instruments into it. That's where the harmony came, like banjos, then the brass instruments, the tubas. So then it became like they used to have tubas playing the bass for them, the banjo giving the rhythm, and the blues the singing part came, which was blues was originally from the deep south once again. And their music is actually crying out their sorrows while working in the fields. That's how it originated. And also talking about the rhythm, there's a thing called cross rhythm where it's not a straightforward beat. For example, those days the marching bands had the bass drums and the snares. So the bass would give a syncopated beat and the snare would play its own rhythm. And when it comes together, that's what you call cross rhythm. That's like the origins of rhythm in jazz. Cross rhythm, that's very characteristic feature about jazz music.
What is essential in jazz, instrument-wise and music-wise?
As it grew, there came the era where there were proper drum kits. Then instead of the tuba bass, or they call the sausaphone, that huge brass instrument, they started using the double bass to give the bass. And piano became an essential instrument. That was the European influence. And if you say, as an all-time jazz unit, maybe drums, piano, bass, and today it has evolved into a saxophone, being like the voice of jazz. Saxophone is like the voice of jazz.
Ella Fitzgerald, Nat King Cole, Louis Armstrong, Diana Krall, Tony Bennett, some of the world's greatest jazz singers. What is it that lends itself, what is it about a voice that lends itself to jazz?
Louis Armstrong was the pioneer. He's the, if I'm not wrong, he was the first guy to scat. That means instead of using the lyrics, he would come up with his own sounds. Like he had his, I just can't imitate him, but he had his way of, ending a song like, there's a way of doing it. And that's another element which has been taken into different levels by many singers. Not very well known, but a fantastic jazz singer is Kurt Elling. He has taken scatting into another level. So I think vocally, apart from singing the song, improvisation, scatting is an element. Ella Fitzgerald was an expert at it. She was brilliant. Tony Bennett was definitely a super singer. He had his own timing. I mean, although Frank is not directly considered under jazz music like as a jazz singer, he also had his way of phrasing and timing, which is very jazzy.
Gananath, how much of African American history is actually entwined in jazz?
So, in the late 16th century, it's estimated that there were about 400,000 slaves. It's called that transatlantic slave trade. They were brought from West Africa and the Congo Basin. So, when they came to Louisiana, New Orleans, during the festivals, harvesting festivals, these guys started having dressed in costumes like horn-rimmed headgear and oxtails. And as I told you, they used gumbo boxes with the sheepskin. They started doing this drumming and dancing activity. That's the absolute beginning of the African influence in jazz. And thereafter, it was, I have to say, it was a collaboration. Definitely the blues. Those were the guys who were working in the cotton fields. They were crying out their whatever blues. And that also got incorporated into the music, along with the European instruments, where the harmony and the melody part came. So you can say it's actually mixed. Although we always give the credit to the black people, I think the European influence is also really big in jazz music as it grew on. As for origins, and if you have to say two African elements, was one is the blues for sure, and also there's another element which, well, most people know, a type of music called ragtime, which the meaning is rag rhythm, a syncopated rhythm. Especially the pianists of that era in the 1920s also incorporated into jazz music. So those two elements cannot be left out talking about the origins of jazz and the African influence. So I will put it this way: the rhythm comes from the African element, but the harmony came from the European.
Are there any misconceptions about jazz that you would like to dispel?
It's not like a subject like mathematics, where you can define and have one answer. For example, if you are musicians, can you define jazz? The big ones. Once Duke Ellington had said, after all, it's all music. So another guy said, if I have defined jazz in 4 words, Louis Armstrong, Charlie Parker. So, or Louis Armstrong, Chet Baker. So each one has their own way of defining it. But I guess if you love jazz, you know what it is. You feel it. The freedom and the improvisation a performer creates, sometimes done just on the spur of the moment. So I repeat that fidelity to the musical score is not important for a jazz musician. It's your performance element. So it's more respecting the performer than the music composer or the songwriter.
Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Subscribe, follow, and like us for more.